Okay, so this is the part 2 of the lesson dealing with complex fractions. Just as a reminder from the previous lesson as well, that a complex fraction is a rational expression whose numerator, denominator, or both contain one or more rational expressions. Okay, so let's simplify each of these complex fractions. All right, let's look at number 1. So you have x plus 2 divided by x minus 2 divided by x minus 1, and that's all being divided by x plus 1 divided by x plus x plus 1 divided by x minus 1. Alright, make sure you understand that this is a complex fraction. So you have this fraction, where you have a rational expression, whose numerator contains one or more rational expressions, and whose denominator contains one or more rational expression. And it doesn't have to be both, it could just be the numerator or the denominator that has one or more rational expressions. Okay, so just as in the previous lesson, make sure you factor the denominators, and the denominators I can't factor any further, so I'm going to circle those denominators just like this, and you want to find the LCD of those four factors. And so the LCD, if you notice, is just going to be x times x minus 1. That's your LCD. Now, once you find the LCD, I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this without the circles. So I'm going to have x plus 2 divided by x minus 2 divided by x minus 1 divided by, that's minus 1, divided by x plus 1 divided by x plus 1 divided by x minus 1. Alright, so basically what you're going to do, just like you did before, you're going to see how the numerator has two fractions, two rational expressions. So you're going to put that in parentheses, same thing here, put that in parentheses, and you're going to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by the LCD, which means your steps. So your steps. So find the LCD, find the least common denominator of all fractions within the complex fraction. Once you do that, you can multiply the numerator and the denominator of the complex fraction by the LCD. Okay, now you're going to clear the fractions. So now remember, this is your LCD right here, so you got to be a little bit careful. That's your LCD. So you're going to distribute this LCD through the parentheses. Same thing here. So every term that's in parentheses has to multiply by the LCD. Okay? So if you be careful, try not to do this in your mind, in your head, without putting stuff on paper. You may mess up. You may get an error somewhere. Alright, so x plus 2 over x times the LCD. If you write it out, it makes things a lot easier for you in terms of not making any errors. Minus this fraction times the LCD. Okay? Alright, let's go to the denominator. The first fraction times the LCD plus the second fraction times the LCD. Okay? Alright, so that's what I have. Okay, now let's reduce. So when I reduce, these x's divide out, and I end up with this so far. In my numerator, I end up with x plus 2 in parentheses times x minus 1. That's what I end up with. X plus 2 times x minus 1. Minus, alright, over here, these x minus 1's divide out, and all you're left with is minus 2x. So minus 2x. Okay, now your denominator. In my denominator, these x's divide out, and again, you're left with x plus 1 times x minus 1. X plus 1 times x minus 1. Plus, over here, these x minus 1's divide out, and you're left with x times x plus 1. So it looks like this. X times x plus 1. Alright, so that's where I'm at. Now notice you could have easily messed up anywhere along this process, so you really need to be careful. Alright, so let's continue on with this problem. Okay, now the next step is to simplify this as much as possible, the numerators and denominators. So you got to remember some things. You have to remember some things from previous lessons. So if I cover this part up right here, to get rid of the parentheses here, I'm going to have to use a FOIL method. Same thing here, FOIL method. Alright, so let's continue with this. So when I use a FOIL method, x times x is x squared. The outer is a negative x. The inner is a positive 2x. And the last is negative 2. And then don't forget you're subtracting 2x. So that's what I end up with. So all this is my numerator for right now. My denominator, same thing. Use a FOIL method. X times x is x squared. The outer is a negative x. The inner is a positive x. And the last, a positive 1 times a negative 1 is a negative 1. And over here, you're going to distribute. So x times x is x squared, so plus x squared. And then x times 1 is x. Okay? Alright, now combine like terms. Let's say I have x squared. Alright, now the x's. So this negative x and a 2x is x. And that x, remember this is x, and that x and a negative 2x is a negative x. And then minus 2. The denominator, x squared, always be careful, x squared and an x squared is 2x squared. Okay, the x's, the x terms, a negative x and a positive x is 0. But I also have this x right here. So that's going to be plus x. And then the only thing left over is this constant, minus 1. So that's where I'm at. Alright, now remember the last step is to factor your numerator and denominator and see if you can reduce any factors. So let's go ahead and factor the numerator. Here, I'm going to end up getting, when I factor x squared minus x minus 2, I'm going to get x minus 2 times x plus 1. And the denominator, I'm going to get 2x, x, so the last sign's negative, these signs in here are different. And the only possibility for 1 is 1 and 1. And I'm going to need this to be a plus and this to be a minus. Alright, so that's where I'm at. And then finally, the next step is to reduce, and notice that these two factors reduce, and the only thing left over is this, and there's your answer. So the answer is going to be x minus 2 divided by 2x minus 1. Okay? Alright, so notice the process it took to go back over this. Lots and lots of steps. Okay? So go back over this part of the lesson. Alright, let's look at this problem. Okay, number 2. Let's suppose we had 2 divided by x plus 1 divided by x squared divided by y divided by x squared. Alright, so in this particular case, you have 3 denominators altogether. This one, and this one. So you got to find the LCD of those three denominators. So the LCD is going to be x squared. I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this without the parentheses, without those circles. So I get 2 over x plus 1 over x squared divided by y over x squared. Alright, now, since the numerator has two rational expressions in it, I'm going to put that in parentheses. I'm going to multiply by the LCD. So remember, once you find the LCD, you're going to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by that LCD. So that's how you're going to clear your fractions. Now, I didn't put parentheses here because that's just one rational expression. Alright, and then we're going to distribute here. And so if you need to, right in that step, you're saying the first fraction times the LCD plus the second fraction times the LCD. Okay? All over the fraction here, that only fraction you see down there, times the LCD. Okay, now let's reduce. You have one factor of x here, you have 2 here, so this will become a factor 1, and that one factor will reduce with one of these, and you're left with 1. Over here, both of these divide out. They're the same number of factors. Over here, same thing, same number of factors. So you're left with factors of 1s. So now I get this though. I get 2 over 1 times x is 2x plus, and that's a 1 and that's a 1. So 1 times 1 is 1. So that's my numerator. And my denominator, y over 1 times 1 is y. And there's your answer. So 2y plus 1 divided by y. That's all you can do to that one. Okay, let's look at this one. Alright, suppose you have x over 9 minus 1 over x divided by 1 plus 3 over x. Again, notice that this is a complex fraction, so you have rational expressions in your numerator, rational expressions in your denominator. Okay, I'm going to circle my denominators, 9x and x. Now this is really 1 over 1, but if you want to put 1 over 1, the 1's not going to change any of these that I have circled in terms of finding the LCD. So the LCD, if you notice, that's just 9x. So I'm going to rewrite this without the circles in it. So I get x over 9 plus 1 over x divided by 1 plus 3 over x. Now, remember that once you find the LCD, the next step is to multiply numerator and denominator by the LCD. That's how you want to clear those things that have circled. That's what you want to do. Now, in the numerator, you have two rational expressions. You have more than one, so go ahead and you put those in parentheses because all of these have to be multiplied by the LCD. Same thing here. All of these terms have to be multiplied by the LCD. Alright, so now you can get rid of the parentheses, so you can distribute. And don't forget though, you may want to rewrite that step. So this is really x over 9 times 9x plus 1 over x times 9x. So all these fractions have to be multiplied by the LCD. So both of those fractions have to be multiplied by the LCD. Same thing here. Both of those fractions have to be multiplied by the LCD. So 1 times 9x plus 3 over x times 9x. Okay? Now once you do that, the next step is to reduce. These 9's divide out. And you're going to be left with x times x is x squared. These x's divide out, and you get 1 times 9 is 9, just like this, divided by. This 1 times 9x is just 9x, plus over here you have these x's divide out, and you get 27. Now, before I go on, I did make a mistake up here. See how this was a minus subtraction, and I made a mistake. This needs to be a subtraction. So don't forget, that's a subtraction, that's a subtraction, and that's a subtraction. Okay, so right here. So I did make a mistake. This was the original problem, and for some reason I forgot to put subtraction. So that's a subtraction, that's a subtraction. Alright, so that's where we're at. Okay, now notice the numerator is a difference of two squares, so I'm going to factor x minus 3, x plus 3. The denominator I can factor out a 9, so that's 9 times x plus 3. And then finally reducing, these x plus 3's divide out, you're left with factors of 1. And so the answer is x minus 3 divided by 9. Alright, let's look at this one. Alright, number 4, you have x minus 1 divided by x squared minus 4. And that fraction is being divided by 1 plus 1 divided by x minus 2. Okay. Alright, so before you find the LCD, you got to make sure these things that have circled, first of all, make sure they're in factored form. So basically, see that x squared minus 4? Well, that's the difference of two squares, so I get x minus 1 divided by x minus 2 times x plus 2. All that's being divided by 1 plus 1 over x minus 2. Now remember, this one's really 1 over 1. Alright, now I'm going to circle all those denominators again. I need to find the LCD. So notice the LCD is going to be x minus 2 times x plus 2. So the LCD is x minus 2, x plus 2. So I'm going to rewrite this over with the factored part here, and without the circles. So I get x minus 1 over x minus 2, x plus 2, divided by 1 plus 1 over x minus 2. Alright. So now, once you find the LCD, remember the next step is to multiply numerator and denominator by the LCD. Now notice this is one rational expression, so I don't need to put that in parentheses. This is 2 though, so that's going to have to be in parentheses. And what I want to do is multiply the numerator by the LCD, just like this. And I want to multiply the denominator by the LCD, just like this. Okay? Alright, now, in the denominator, you got to get rid of the parentheses. So remember, this is LCD. So every term here has to be multiplied by the LCD, just like that. Alright, now, when I look at the numerator, notice the numerator. Right off the bat, all of these divide out. Okay? And all you're left with in the numerator is x minus 1 over 1 times 1, which is just x minus 1. That's your numerator. My denominator, okay, so I have to distribute. Remember, you're going to distribute this. So 1 times the LCD is the LCD. That's what you get. Plus this fraction, 1 over x minus 2, times the LCD. Alright, so both of these had to be multiplied by the LCD. So 1 times this is the LCD plus 1 over x minus 2 times the LCD. Okay, now get rid. First of all, let's go ahead and reduce this right here. So this x minus 2 reduced to this x minus 2. Now remember, you want to get rid of the parentheses here, so you have to use a FOIL method. So you're going to get x minus 1 over. Okay, now when you use the FOIL method, this is when I use FOIL. This is x squared. The outer is 2x. The inner is a negative 2x, and the last is a negative 4. Okay, plus, now remember these x minus 2's reduce, divide out, so you get 1 times x plus 2 is x plus 2. That's what you get. Alright, combining like terms, my numerator is x minus 1, my denominator is x squared. Okay, now let's look at the like terms. So a positive 2x and a negative 2x is 0. And then 0 plus x is x. So I get plus x. So I get it. So far I get x squared plus x. And then my constants, a negative 4 and a positive 2 is a negative 2. Okay, now remember the next step is to factor and see if you can reduce anything. My numerator is going to stay x minus 1. My denominator, though, I can factor. So that's going to be x plus 2 times x minus 1. And now reducing, these x minus 1's divide out. Make sure you put 1's in their factors of 1's in their place. And I end up with 1 divided by x plus 2. So there's your answer. So you can very easily miss something along the way. So you need to be very careful. Okay, so that's going to take care of this part 2 of complex fractions.